for the latest round of the GT Championship, the Kirscher Global Endurance GT Series, a series which has really grown in strength throughout the course of 1995. 11,000 spectators turning up to watch the race at the Nurburgring on a fine and sunny day, and watching for the chance of the battles between the Ferraris and the McLarens. On board with the Freisinger Porsche being driven by Wolfgang Kaufmann as the cars set off at the beginning of the 4-hour event. Well, starting from pole position, his third consecutive pole position, in fact, in the series, Anders Olofsson in the Ferrari. Back on board with Wolfgang Kaufmann a little further down the order, but it was Anders Olofsson leading from Michel Ferte in another Ferrari in second place, then the first of the McLarens, that of John Nielsen. He was being chased by Fabio Mancini in the Ferrari Club Italia Ferrari F40 in fourth position, and then in fifth place was coming the Porsche, the Labra competition Porsche of Christophe Bouchou. Anders Olofsson trying to get away from Michel Ferte, but the two Ferraris showing all the pace that they had done in qualifying. The Ferrari certainly has been quick over the last few GT races, but so far has been yet to prove its actual endurance throughout the course of the events. And it's been the McLarens that have been dominating proceedings. In fact, they've taken every win except one during the championship so far. Olofsson still leading from Ferte and Nielsen, with Mancini just behind them. And at this point in the race, the Ray Bell Maurizio Sandro Sala car, which has actually taken the 4 victories out of 5 in the series so far. The 5th victory indeed was taken by a McLaren as well. That car taking things a little steady at this point. Suddenly problems for Michel Ferte, retiring at the end of the section coming up, back up the hill from the hairpin. Problems for the F40, putting them out of the race, and early evidence of the fallibility of the F40. Olofsson was beginning to pull away a little bit from Nielsen in second position, with Mancini now in third place in the Ferrari F40, being shared with the British driver Gary Ailes. Indeed, that Ferrari was now beginning to attack the McLaren of Nielsen, and Nielsen was beginning to feel the pressure. The Nielsen-Buescher McLaren not running on the ideal tyres that they'd wanted for the event, having to wait at the moment to get the supply of Goodyears that they require for the car, and definitely finding that they were losing some time. Or indeed, Nielsen making a mistake under braking, and Mancini able to take the Ferrari through into second place. Ferraris 1 and 2 then, with Olofsson leading Mancini. The battle for fourth place was going on between the Gulf McLaren of Ray Bell and Maurizio Sandro Sala and the Ciccardi McLaren. Fabien Giroir and Olivier Grouillard sharing that car, and the number 7 car going through. Meanwhile, problems for the Conrad Porsche number 20, being driven by Bert Plug. Puncture, but able to get it back into the pit lane. And then more problems for the race leader, the Ferrari F40 of Olofsson. They had to change their brake pads during one of their scheduled pit stops, and it took an awful lot longer than they had planned. They dropped right down the order, and then indeed find themselves being passed by the number 77 Ferrari as well. With all this going on, it was actually the Fabien Giroir, Olivier Grouillard McLaren that came through to take the lead. One of the newest McLarens onto the scene, but nonetheless, the very experienced and very rapid driver pairing was getting the car right on the pace. Meanwhile, the Labra competition Porsche, which had a new engine, 550 brake horsepower motor, was suffering brake problems as they went through the race. Jean-Pierre Jarier behind the wheel when it ended up in the gravel trap. More problems as well for the Ferrari 348, being co-driven by Tony Ring, Eurosport's Nordic commentator. Out of the pits after the second pit stop, the number 1 McLaren, avoiding changing brake pads due to very gentle treatment of the car throughout the race. That was why they hadn't been pushing hard in the early part, and it proved to be a great move. The Ciccardi car had to change its brake pads, and they lost a lot of time doing that and dropped down the order. The number 50 Porsche now of Giacomelli and Kaufmann, now the best of the Porsches. On board with Bruno Giacomelli in the car. Well, Giacomelli was having a reasonable run at this point in the race, but it was the end of the hopes for the other main Porsche in the race. Bob Volek was driving the Labras competition car, which they had managed to get out of the gravel trap, but the transmission failed not too long after that, so they went out of the event altogether. And so we started to move towards the latter stages of the race, and the Gicardi car, which had lost that time in the pits, managed to catch up again towards the leaders, but it wasn't going to be enough to beat Ray Baum and Maurizio Sandro Sala. Meanwhile, in the categories, it was the Hubner Oberndorfer Porsche 911 that was going to finish second in the GT2 category. And for the third time this season, it was the Lilian Breiner Enzo Calderari Porsche 911 that took the victory in the GT2 part. Fifth place went to the Harrods McLaren of Andy Wallace and Justin Bell, which had actually led at one point in the race earlier on. And fourth position went to the Pierre-Henri Raffanel Lindsay Owen-Jones McLaren. Finishing up behind the West McLaren of John Nielsen and Thomas Buescher. Pushing quite hard even in the latter stages of the race, but it wasn't going to be enough to overcome the advantage of the Fabien Gillois Olivier Grouillard car, finishing in second place after fighting back, having lost that time in the pit lane. But the win on this occasion going once again to Ray Baum and Maurizio Sandro Sala. A superb achievement, taking yet another victory in the series, and it was a top 5 places for McLaren. So delight on the podium once again for Maurizio Sandro Sala and Ray Baum. And Ray Baum certainly praising Sala for his careful driving in the early stages to look after those brakes and allow them to take the victory through some clever strategy and good tactical planning. And to Fontana, alongside him Michael Schumacher's younger brother Ralf Schumacher.
More often associated with motorcycles than cars. And finally to Silverstone, the home of British motor racing, for round 6 of the British Formula 3 Championship. The 4th round of the Belgian Rally Championship is the Wallonie Rally, the 12th time this event's been held. Winner of the last rally,